The Western media has a way of painting the narrative that Black people are criminals, fraudsters, and the only ones doing illegal activity. With the help of the African Superstar and the African Superstar Media Group, AMG, we are bringing you an exclusive new series that highlights some of the most infamous criminals of all time. White fraudsters. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe this channel. If you watch the mainstream media, you'd be under the impression that white men are all doctors, lawyers, and heroes. This depiction in the media couldn't be any further from the truth. In reality, white men are behind many violent and dangerous crimes. They practice pedophilia, murder, and they are constantly using violence to inflict their mentality on people around the world. Today on White Fraudsters, we would like to highlight the infamous Frank Abagnale. Now, it's no surprise we couldn't find any mugshots of this gentleman. If he were a Black man, his mugshot would be blasted all over the world to see. Although Google only has respectable smiling images of this hardcore criminal, he is a con man who became an FBI informant, eventually went on to write a book and became a movie star.
Abagnale, Frank, welcome to Wyoming Chronicle. Our viewers know you. I think, like many viewers across the country, many Americans, because of the movie and the fame that you've achieved from Catch Me If You Can, from a book you wrote that was turned into a movie, a Broadway play, a television series that talked about your early life as a forger, con artist, and really a criminal. But welcome to Wyoming Chronicle.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
You bet. You're here because you're assisting AARP Wyoming and AARP nationally to give good advice to people to protect themselves from fraud and from criminal imposters like you were at one time in your life. And we're going to get to many tips that you have for our viewers here in just a little bit.
Sure.
But before we begin, take us back, Frank, if you would, to the time when in your life when you were 16 years old. You need to you made some decisions that were family-based, and you were on your own, and you began a short life as a criminal.
Yeah, when I was 16 years old, my parents separated, and I found myself in a courtroom with my parents and the judge telling me that I had to decide which parent I was going to live with. And as a 16-year-old boy, I couldn't do that. I couldn't find a way to do that, so I ran out of the courtroom. And I ended up as a runaway in New York City. Back in the 60s, there were a lot of runaways, but a lot of them got caught up in the Haight-Ashbury, the hippie scene, the drug scene. And I realized real quick that the only way I'm going to survive is if people don't think I'm 16. They're going to have to believe I'm a lot older than that. So we had a driver's license at 16. Back then they didn't have a photo on it. It was an IBM card. So I altered one digit of my date of birth. I was born in 1948, and I changed that 4 to a 3. And that made me 10 years older, or 26 years old. And I started writing checks, which at first I had some money in my account, and I found it very easy for me to go in and write a check. And so when the money ran out, I kept writing those checks, and the checks started to bounce. Police started looking for me as a runaway, and I realized I have to leave New York City pretty quickly. And one day I happened to be walking up the street and saw an airline crew come out of a hotel. And I thought to myself, wow, if I could get one of those uniforms, then I could go into the bank as a pilot and say that I'm out of town and I ran a little short on cash, could I cash a check? And it would make it so much easier. Never thinking of anything else other than just that. Everything I did was at the moment, never premeditated.
No remorse at the time? No thinking of consequences?
I always tell people who say, you were brilliant, you were a genius. I was just a kid. And I think that was the success that I had being a kid, because I had no conscience, I had no thoughts of being caught. I think because I was so young, I didn't premeditate anything. So I didn't sit out in front of a bank with a $500 check and say, I'm going to go in and cash this check, so here's my plan. I'll say this, and if they say this, then I'll do this. If they do this, I'll do that. I just went in and did it. And I think that was all the fact of being an adolescent. I've always believed had I been a little older, had I started doing this at 21 or 25, I would have done half the things I did, because I would have rationalized that I'm going to get caught, it's not possible, it can't happen. I think because I was so young is why I had so much success doing some of the things I did.
So you tell me what's so different about what Mr. Frank Abagnale did compared to what so many other people are doing just to survive. It's quite interesting how this narrative shows him as a young person, a kid doing frivolous things that he didn't know what he was doing. And now he's a grown man and now he's turned his life around, when they don't offer those same options to people of color as a whole that have committed crimes. Like I mentioned, he went on to the FBI and eventually wrote a book and that became a movie called Catch Me If You Can. Catch Me If You Can is a 1980s book based on the early life exploits of Frank Abagnale, a former con artist. As a young man, Abagnale reportedly cashed $2.5 million worth of bad checks while impersonating a Pan Am pilot, doctor, teacher, and an attorney. There have, however, been questions of the authenticity of Frank Abagnale's story. After Abagnale spoke at a seminar in 1978, 2 years before the book's publication, a San Francisco Chronicle reporter phoned a number of institutions that Abagnale mentioned to confirm his claims and found no evidence for them. Abagnale responded that he doubted anyone would confirm them due to embarrassment. He later said he changed the name. In 2002, Abagnale addressed the issue of the book's truthfulness with a statement posted on his company's website, which said, and I quote, "I was interviewed by the co-writer about 4 times. I believe he did a great job telling the story, but he also over-dramatized and exaggerated some of the story. That was his style." Some even began to conduct their own research. Science journalist Alan Logan remembers watching the film on video cassette after it came out and thinking that there was just something off about it. Logan used public records and newspaper clippings to find out the real story. He even spoke to people who knew Abagnale before the myth about his life took off, including the flight attendant that Abagnale met in 1969, an encounter that eventually led to his incarceration. On the screen, you can see actual news clippings from 1978 that debunk the validity of Abagnale's story. So let me get this straight. Even after there was questions about the validity of the story, this guy still got a movie produced and walks free today? All I know is that the double standards are beyond clear. You know, if this was not a white male, the sentence would be totally harsh and there'd be no way for this guy to matriculate back into society. This is just ridiculous, and that's why we're doing this series called White Fraudsters. So what do you guys think about this fraudster? Leave your comments below. Until we meet again.